Hello, this is Rob Mazak, and I'd like to take a moment to welcome you to the Life by Mazak podcast channel. Here on this channel, anything is possible. Any subject will and usually is discussed, and there's no telling how this message will unfold as we work through an idea, through an experience, or through a thought. These subjects come from the vast amount of information and experience through spirit, through life lessons, and from working with a lot of other people. Scripts are never used on this channel, and the message simply unfolds as the subject is discussed. Follow along and see where it leads us, or more specifically, where it leads me. These podcasts are produced in the hopes of helping others to benefit, to grow, and to excel in their own human experience. At Life by Mazak, we work towards helping you achieve wellness for your mind, your body, and your soul using many specialized services. Services that include psychic medium and tarot readings, quantum healing hypnosis, past life regression, intuitive Reiki healing, life coaching, and many other services. If you enjoyed this podcast, please click the like button and share this with others. Our goal is to reach as many people as we can with the knowledge that is shared on this podcast channel. Good day to everybody. I wanted to spend a little time, no pun intended, talking about time and our perception of time. Now, I've talked a lot about perception of time over many of my podcasts. Kind of stumbled upon some interesting research and I guess, quote unquote, evidence or information based on scientific experiments and investigation that actually lends to a little bit deeper understanding or really deep understanding. And the reason I found myself going in the direction of these kinds of experiments and ideas is I was talking to a coworker of mine over the weekend. I started talking to him about the perception of time for some reason. I think it's because I was watching the microwave cook my lunch or heat it up. He walked in and he just kind of this inquisitive look on his face. And I said, "So why the interesting face?" He said, "I was wondering if you were just staring off into space." I'm like, "No, I'm watching my lunch get warmed up and it seems like it's taking forever." I said, apparently the more you watch it, the slower it goes. And he mentioned something that was very interesting. He says, "I have this theory that metabolism really affects the perception of time." And I went, "Well, that's something I've never really thought about." And he had some way of describing it. I don't remember what it was. But almost immediately, grabbed my lunch, went down to my computer, Googled that very information. And sure enough, his theory, quote unquote, is actually true in many ways that he didn't even believe that it was true. So I sent it to him, and he has read through some of it. And I'm sure we'll get him on a podcast at some point. He says he has a lot of really cool things to talk about. Very brainiac kind of guy, very smart. So I would love to have him on. We'll see how that goes. But I wanted to try to do some justice to some of the information that I watched on videos and read. I will link some information in the comments so you can go look at it more detailed. But I wanted to kind of intrigue you or get you intrigued in the possibility of some of these things being accurate. I think they are. I think we all realize that the way we remember things, the way we perceive things, generally feels different than the way we originally thought we perceived them or remembered them. So there are a few different types of categories of time measurement according to one particular scientist. One of them is the simple passage of time, or the way we would consider the present, how we measure time going through our day as we move along and doing activities, things like that. So the passage of time. And then we have prospective time, how we measure time moving forward. And that's not exactly the same as what we just talked about. It's like trying to say or ask somebody to measure what it feels like at 5 minutes and realizing that you really don't know how to measure 5 minutes without some kind of clock or device. So it is different moving forward how we perceive the passage of time, not so much the individual moments of the day. And then there's retrospective time, time the way we think we remember it or the way we perceive we remember it. I remember when I was a kid, for example, that I thought my backyard was just the most monstrous yard in the world. I mean, it seemed so huge and so big, and it seemed like I could run in it forever. And when I went back and looked at the yard in the house in my older life, later on in life, I realized how small the yard really was. And some of that could be size difference, me being smaller versus being taller. But I realized then at that point that I really don't remember things like they may have actually been. And I think that's the case for most things. Even when you are in court trying to prove things or get eyewitnesses, they've done lots of experiments that'll show that the way people remember things, rather, is way different for every person. And so the passage of time and the way we remember things, the way we perceive things, is very, very different for everybody. And it could be very different for each person, each day, each moment. And it is very, very interesting. So he talked about, or the scientists talked about, the fact that we are all wired biologically in every cell and every gene to work off of the 24-hour clock, 24-hour cycle, or the circadian rhythm. We've probably all heard that. The normal rhythm that we are entrained with because we live on this planet, in this place, because it is also designed in a 24-hour fashion. Sun comes up, stays up during the day, and it goes down at night, starts all over again. Now, whether we are living on a spinning ball in the vacuum of space and going around the sun and traveling through the universe as a solar system and a galaxy and all that, I don't know if that's true or not. However, whatever this reality is or whatever this place we live in is designed around a 24-hour cycle. And it is interesting the way he described it, that we are actually entrained to thrive in that 24-hour cycle. And so if we're not careful and we get out of that circadian rhythm, or whatever the circadian rhythm is for us, we can find ourselves out of balance and out of whack and unproductive and just not feeling right and not doing well in life and all that. Now, the circadian rhythm normally looks at life as most people do, or at least most theories and most scientists, where you are getting up in the morning, working and doing things throughout the day and going to sleep at night. Now, some people thrive the opposite. So I don't know what that's about. He didn't really talk about that. But my understanding is that circadian rhythm is actually different for everybody. But we do ultimately live and thrive and entrained in the 24-hour cycle. And according to this particular scientist, you can't escape that. That's just the way we're wired. That's the way everything works in our body, in our mind, our brain, everything, every cell, everything, every tissue, every gene, they all work on this 24-hour clock. So it is ideal, of course, to try to take advantage of that, generally speaking, right? So early in the day or upon awakening, you tend to have a lot more dopamine and norepinephrine type molecules that are alive and popping, and they are what most people call the feel-good genes. But what it does is it gives you that focus, the ability to do focused tasks and hard tasks early in your day. As the day goes on, that kind of wanes off and those levels start to drop. And the longer you go throughout your day, the more those drop and the serotonin levels start to rise to prepare you for sleep. And so it is better actually to do more things that are creative and artistic later in your day, because doing hyper focused things later in the day, in your day, is a lot more difficult because you are lacking some of the most essential molecules to keep your heightened focus. And the other thing he talks about, which I have not heard before, which is kind of interesting, is the ultradian cycles. And these are 90-minute chunks of time, not time frames or blocks of time that you can do back to back appropriately. I know many of us get forced into doing back to back 90-minute cycles all day, but these ultradian cycles are supposed to be times that we choose generally when we have a choice to actually sit down or engage in very difficult and hard tasks. Hard meaning it requires ultimate focus, no distractions, math type problems, very complex things that you would do. And according to this scientist, once again, most people can't really tolerate more than a couple of those 90-minute cycles in a day. He said there are some, obviously, that are just made different, and they seem to be able to do these throughout the day many times. But most people, once they surpass about 120 minutes of focus that time, you really find yourself at a disadvantage. I found myself that way this weekend. I'm in the military, and it was drill. Normally, I don't have a lot of people in the building to come in my door and have all these conversations and need something, and on and on and on. It just never stops at drill, because most people that need to talk to me are there, and they're like, hey, he's here. So, I mean, it's just like I am engaging in these high-end, hyper-focused activities that require much attention. And I found myself completely losing myself in a conversation. It probably took a good 5 minutes later during the conversation where I actually could remember and regain where I was at with that thought. At first, I was thinking, am I losing it? Am I just getting beyond my age where things are not working like it should? But it is very encouraging to hear this guy talk about these 90-minute cycles and help me realize that I'm just actually normal. That, you can only hold ultra and specific and high-end focus for so long before you start to lose that focus. And what else he talked about, or what I wanted to talk about as well, was our perception of time. Generally speaking, I've said this many times, and basically that's kind of what he's saying here in many ways, is that how we perceive time is based on molecules as well. Dopamine, norepinephrine for higher end of that, and then the serotonin for more of the lower concentration or energy or effectiveness. But once again, simply put, if you are doing something that is absolutely engaging and lots of fun and it's just enjoyable, you find that the time seems to go by super fast. At least during the activity or later in the activity, you realize that hours have passed, for example, and you don't understand why it went so fast, or it seemed to go so fast. And consequently, if you're doing something that is unpleasant, not fun, walking on hot coals or something strange, passage of time seems to take forever. It seems like an eternity. And the funny thing is, our clock during our day, the way time is measured, doesn't change, never changes. It's how we perceive it, how we measure it, how we remember it, that is the difference. And it is interesting that much of this happens at a very base cellular level. Boy, that's a tough word to say. And of course, the main molecules we talked about is dopamine and serotonin. And I've heard dopamine talked about a lot as if it is the feel-good drug or the feel-good molecule that everybody seeks that makes you feel happy and energetic and focused and all that. But it's not just for being happy or being good feeling type thing, but it is also kind of gives you that fight or flight part, that part where you're like ready to go. And it could be that you are in a dangerous spot and that you're in an elevated hyper focus and that you are prepared, or your body is preparing you for absolute attention. And it could also be that it is giving you that wonderful good feeling, warm all over as well. And then of course serotonin is something that helps you relax and go to sleep at night, generally start to wind down. Many people take melatonin and stuff like that is similar to serotonin, or helps release it to help sleep. But by and large, dopamine and epinephrine and those kind of things tend to start activating when you wake up in the morning or whenever you wake up, and it begins to give you that start for your day and get you started. And like I said, it's probably one of the best times to do really difficult tasks and things that make focus really difficult or requires higher ends of focus. And then as you wind throughout your day, serotonin then begins to start ramping up, and eventually it's going to make you tired enough to go to sleep at night. And so there are cycles that need to happen to keep us in rhythm, keep us healthy, so that we can have the proper amount of rest, we can have the proper amount of productivity, survivability, all that stuff has to happen. If you're awake all the time, it sounds cool. I mean, there are many times I've wished, hey man, I wish I never had to sleep or eat. Boy, I'd be so productive. I think we'd get bored, to be honest. I mean, how many things are there to do that that you keep you occupied for 24 hours a day? Sometimes we have days where it feels like we don't have anything to do, and it's like, when will this day ever end? And other times it's like I can never fit anything into it or everything into it. But let's move on here. So the way higher levels of dopamine affect the perception of time is interesting, because what it does it really slows things down, and we tend to overestimate time during that. In other words, the passage of time might be an hour, but we feel like it's only 30 minutes. And it's like it causes time to be finely sliced. It's like going through a slow motion movie, sort of like on sports events on the TV when they show you the play that just happened or the event that just happened in slow motion. They have increased the frame rate to a point where every detail shows up. And so the passage of time seems very, very slow. It just appears to move very, very slow. And this could be, once again, very important if you find yourself in a dangerous spot or you need to be in a heightened state, because it allows you to pick up on all the details and be prepared to fight or flight. It is very useful at times. It does serve us at times, especially when we're doing very hyper-focused activities or things we would like to do. Like if I'm working on a very intricate spreadsheet that requires very high focus and very much detail that goes into that. I struggle with detail anyway. But if I need to do that, I'm going to need to have higher levels of dopamine, norepinephrine, all of that to help me focus and help me get through that, to finally slice up time so that I can get through that and make more sense of it. Right? And then on the other side of that is serotonin. It causes time to be more batched in larger bins of time. So the frame rate slows down so that everything that's happening appears to go faster. And so my friend's theory, the theory that originally got me started looking at this, he thought that as metabolism slows down as we age, that our maybe not our serotonin improves, but that metabolism creates that slow frame rate within us that causes or appears to cause time to go much faster. Because we're moving slower in some respect, the systems are moving slower, time appears to be going faster. And then the reverse happens when we're younger, when we have a lot more higher levels of dopamine and all that. Our frame rate is slowed down a lot. So it appears to be much faster. Time seems to go by really fast. I don't know about you, but it does actually feel that way. I am an older guy, of course, 64, and I have absolutely experienced that where everything seems to be moving much faster. Time seems to be moving faster. And when I was younger, it seemed like everything just was like a blur. When you look back at time, we look at our past as something that seemed to really happen much faster sometimes, or slower in some cases. But even if we have an experience, to segue here, even if we have an experience that we think went by really fast in our past, and we look back at it, it is easier in a different state of heightened awareness to look back at that frame or that movie and pick out things a little easier and slower. So it seems to me that our memories are really a struggle sometimes to really feel like we can have an accurate grasp on our memories and understanding. And I don't know about you, but I don't look back at the past very much. I don't feel like the past is really something to dwell on, although it is what has made us, of course, made us who we are. But looking back at the past, it is really a much different way of looking at it, because when I talk to my brothers or my siblings or whomever was in my past with me, the way they recollect my past is much different than the way I remember my past. And I don't know if it's because they're remembering it wrong or I'm remembering it wrong. But I guess it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you listen to the scientist, like I said, I'll put the link in the comments, because I'm not doing justice to this at all. But I found it very intriguing that we are so wired with this earth, this place that we live in, and that every part of our being is literally wound around time. And that time is probably one of the most important aspects of our existence. And I've bashed time before, saying that, like many others, that it is something that is made up by us, and we're us humans are the only ones that have ever broken our day up into 24 hours. It makes more sense now as to why we do that, or why we would do that. Maybe this was something that was given to us by the source, or someone else, or something else, or some other way that came into our thinking and our consciousness. But knowing now that we are an ultimate part of whatever this creation we're in, and how delicately and intricately we are wired to be here, it really makes that 400 trillion to 1 chance of being here even more intriguing and more amazing to me, because looking at the complexity of us as humans is just absolutely amazing, that we could exist here in such a precise creation, whatever the creation is. And so I think we have to really be careful how we use our time, how we manage our time, and maybe take more advantage of some of these cycles that are built into us, and create consistency around that circadian rhythm, and allow our life to actually thrive a little bit better. If we're supposed to be working off this 24-hour clock, figuring out when we have our best levels of dopamine or attention, and our best periods of the day that are more designed around creativity, and we can find ourselves a lot further along. And it's like not swimming upstream, but swimming with the stream. And so I encourage you guys to, maybe if you find this interesting, to go and do some of your own research and listen to it. 'Cause like I said, I am definitely not doing justice to this topic. But I wanted to give enough of a teaser for you guys to really think about this and go out and look at it yourself. Because it is quite amazing when you look at science and perception and all that. Perception of time is really interesting based on the way I'm trying to portray it. But I even watched or listened to a research article or video the other day, and it was talking about the fact that perception is not actually coming towards us. In other words, things that are happening supposedly outside of us is not necessarily coming into our consciousness, and then we process it and figure it out with our mind and our brain or whatever's going on in our skull, but that the perception is actually going the other way. And so does that speak to the fact that we are creating our life as we go? I'm not even sure how they measure all these things. It's just crazy. I can't prove that. I can't justify that. But it's really interesting. I think more and more I see that our perceptions are the ultimate guide to us, understanding how we perceive things, the best way we perceive things, the best way we can use that perception to guide us in life and create our truths and create our pathway is very important. Because if perception really is the key to what we hold as true, which I do believe it is, I believe that we need to be careful what we allow in that will help create a perception that we may not like and a truth that we may not like. We may have to spend some time analyzing ourselves, looking at ourselves, trying to figure out where we are landing on the topic of perception and what we hold as true. Find out if we're really comfortable with that truth and take advantage of these ideas behind science that is giving us things and tools that we can use to create a perception that might be better. Why not? Because if we are really this intricately aligned with creation, and I'm saying that as a bigger aspect than just Earth, then we can and we should be able to create our life and to change our perception, change our truth, which will create a different life for us. Why not? Let's begin to use the tools and let's analyze ourselves and figure out how we can move forward in a better way. Wow, I kind of went all over the map on that one, but that's okay. I think you get the idea. Our perception of time is different throughout our day, the way it looks in the past, the way it appears to be in the moment, and the way we measure it moving forward. And without actually having devices and measuring tools like clocks and phones and the sun coming up and the sun going down and night coming around and all these things that help us measure our perception of time, we really don't have a perception of time. Because when they do scientific studies where they put people, say, in a room without any way to measure time, no outside influences, not seeing the sun come up, the sun go down, the moon come up, or any of that, and take away all their ability to track time on the device, most people really don't know how to measure time. They lose their perception of time. And so what keeps us locked into a perception of time a lot of times is our devices. I'm not saying we need to throw all our devices away. I'm not saying that. I just want you guys to realize that we are embedded in time. We might as well take advantage of it and use our 24 hours every day appropriately and use it to move forward in life and take advantage of the way we're wired, the way we're biologically put together, and live on purpose. I encourage you guys to go to my website, lifebymazak.com, LIFEBYMAZAK.com. There you'll find contacts page, you'll find products page, you'll find services page, blog page, all those fun things. And I really look forward to working with all of you all out there because I enjoy talking with people, helping people, and in the process of helping others, I learn to help myself better. I learn more. I learn from everybody. Everybody learns. It's a win-win for everybody. My practice and ways of doing my modalities are little pieces of everybody I've worked with. I've learned from clients, I've learned from mentors, I've learned from people that have helped me, that have done readings and things for me. And so let's all band together, let's all work together and become a better human race and take advantage of the time we have, our 24 hours every day, and let's move forward with purpose. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to working with you. Stay strong and live your life.